Hi, my name is David Liu, and today I'll be talking you through my Eurorack setup. So I've recently got into modular gear, and one of the things I like to go through is kind of how I designed this system. I've recently got into synthesizers, and one of the cool things that you can do with synthesizers of this style is that you can configure them to be what you want. So one of the things that I'll probably show you first is how I've arranged it. So I know there's a lot of wires already here in the patch, and it is playing live right now as we're talking right now, so I might turn that down right now. But what I have here is kind of a companion piece to another synth that I have. So a lot of the ideas about which different modules I chose for this particular setup were dictated by how well they would pair with my other synth, which is the Moog Subharmonicon. So one of the first things you'll probably see here is that I have Pamela's New Workout, which is a lot of clock, CV, and control voltage, or other types of interesting clock-based modulation techniques, or even quantization, which it is doing right now into Platts. So that's one of the first pieces that I have here. The next part is going to be the Mutable Instruments Platts, which provides a lot of different synth voices. Finally, even though it's not being used in this particular patch, is the Maths, which I really wanted to have as a companion piece to the Moog Subharmonicon. Being able to attenuvert with these different, I think the one and the four do the best job of having the most controls for attenuvert, or different types of VCA that go into both negative and positive ranges, other types of ramping and other changes, and the ability to do cycles for kind of your own LFOs is kind of nice. That then leads to some modules that haven't arrived yet, but the next part that recently came in is the Tip Top Audio 1, I think it's called. And what I'm using this for, you'll hear it right now if I switch to a different voice here, and I'll switch it back now. What this is providing is different types of sample-based playback, and what I'm doing is I'm modulating which file it's playing back. So based upon which voltage input it gets at the time of triggering, it'll then switch to a different type of sound. So if I do a drum background, then what I'm going to do there is try to switch to a different drum on a different hit, which you can see over here by the different steps that are being done here. Now, after that, I have the main filter, and I'm doing a bit of a trick here because I don't have a mixer right now to mix the different sounds from Platts and the sample playback into this. So I'm actually using the Expert Sleepers to work as a very expensive mixer to send it back into the filter, which I've chosen as a Z2040. So it has a bit of the Oberheim sound, which I think is based on. And then using a lot of the different modulation capabilities of Pamela's New Workout here to change the different attributes of both Platts and the CV-based playback, obviously, and then the filter itself. So the interesting part about this filter is you do have these two inputs right here. So if we start changing them around, I'll turn up the volume here. I'm going to filter a different section of it now. Now, if I raise this filter up, it gets opened up. Now, what's interesting about this is it's actually using, it's generating its own filter its own envelope, to modulate the cutoff point of the filter in its own kind of envelope curve. So by modulating these two elements here, I'm doing it with the same amount, which you can see already because I patched them the same way with the stack cable. I'm basically providing a way of giving its own envelope to the filter, so it's doing it on based upon the clock cycles that are dictated by this guy. So lots of different ways of putting this together, and really the way that I wanted to have this is more of a kind of a generative system where, as you can see, I can go hands-free. I can use another synth to back this up. Obviously, a lot of this, its design was to save space. I really don't want, like, you know, a massive wall of these things. I really want something that can stand on its own and be fun to play with and carry around, but also be a nice companion piece to the subharmonicon, which normally sits right here, which is why this mixer over here exists. So now let's walk through the actual patch. And what I'll do here is I'll turn up the sound a little bit, just maybe you can hear a bit more. So what we can do here is start looking at how everything's generated. Right now I have Pamela's new workout based as the master clock, doing different types of clock divisions. And the first thing that you can see here is, I think, let's look at the most obvious one. So right now it's playing out, but the voltage per octave, which gives it its kind of notes, are coming from here off of Pamela's new workout. Now what I'm doing here that's special is I'm using the random piped in to the note sequencer within a certain scale, which I think is minor ninth. So it's quantizing it to a certain volt per octave, pushing it into plats. That's why you're getting different types of sounds coming. Now, if we start changing this, say we start changing the frequency, starts going up and down. Now we can start changing the different types of scales that it's sitting in, or scales and modes, I guess, technically. So now it's going to a more like major fifth, parts of triads as we go lower. So I'll put it back to where it was. And then now we're getting also different types of sequences coming from both of these two, which are then modulating the timbre and the morph capabilities of this. So if we start changing this where its center point is, it starts to get a little more wild here. And then the morph here is kind of interesting. I kind of like it here where it's giving kind of a nice jazzy feel. I'm not always able to hit all the 11ths and 13ths perfectly on time, so these guys seem to do a really good job of doing that for me. Next, we have these two piped out into the bass. The bass note is piped out directly out, but then the main voice is piped into the summing parts of the mixer. I'm then taking the output of the kick of the drum into the summing mixer, and that's going into the filter, so we know where that path goes. Let's talk a little bit about what's actually going into the sample system. So we have both of these clocks. One of them, as you can see by the LEDs right here, where it's generating its main kick, and then this one generating its kind of sub kick every time it'll change and jump up a voltage and change to a different file. And that's why we get, you know, if we start changing this every offbeat, right, you'll get the other sound. Now you can actually do some really cool stuff. So if we go to, let's see, the third one, and we start increasing or decreasing the speed, you can change the frequency at which those things occur, and maybe we want them faster. Now we don't even get the original sound because it's doing it every 4x of the original sound. So if we do it by divisions of 2, every other one, we'll get that alternating kick. It's really kind of useful. Another nice advantage here too is we can actually change a little bit of its timbre / other types of weird stuff that they throw into this particular curve. So as you can see, this kind of stands on its own. One of the things I do like to do is I always like to take a blank patch. I unpatch everything, and then I start from the basis of the drum line, the bass, synth sound, and try to build up from there and try to then add modulation. So this was kind of my first interesting patch that I developed that has a lot of texture. And what's really fun too is it's a really nice performance tool, because then as you increase the filter here, well, let's change the cutoff here so it lets more in. You can hear how much it's letting come in right now. It's clipping right now. I don't want it to do that. So now we just really have the synth voice coming in because of where the filter is. Now if I move this filter up, it'll start cutting out more of the synth voice. And as I open up more of it, get more of the hits, the percussion, everything else. Even you can even change the drive here, which adds a little bit of distortion. Yeah, so don't want to overdo it with that one. So lots of really interesting textures that you can create with just a small set of modules. Obviously, modular is not cheap. You could probably get away with a regular kind of purpose-built synth that can do a lot more interesting voices than this, but the sheer fun in being able to patch this is like taking music and electrical engineering and throw them together. So, you know, it's one of the cool things about this particular music instrument-ish thing that they call modular. So, hope you enjoyed today's overview. Trying to maybe do a few more of these if you guys are interested. So, I'll see you guys next time.